right, hello everyone. Today I'm so excited to be joined by Elizabeth Workman, our Assistant Dean for Career Services, and she's going to tell you all about what it looks like looking for a career as a law student at Vanderbilt Law School and how our Career Service Office really helps get you to where you want to go after law school. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Elizabeth to please introduce herself and talk to you a little bit about career services at Vanderbilt.
Well, hello, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Workman. I am Assistant Dean of Career Services at Vanderbilt. I've been in this position for 24 years. And so I've had the pleasure of getting to know hundreds of students during my tenure here. And I hope that I'm going to give you a good general view of what we can do for you at Vanderbilt through the Career Services Office. But I really encourage you to get in touch with me and email me directly with any concerns you have. I love hearing from students, and I'd like very much to answer your specific questions. My email is elizabeth.workman@vanderbilt.edu. If you forget it, check the law school website and under Career Services, and you can find me there. And we can either email back and forth, or we can have a telephone conversation or a Zoom conversation, whichever suits you the best. I aim to help you find the best law school for you. I'm pretty sure that Vanderbilt should be one of your choices, probably the top choice, but I really want to help you find the best place for you. Given that, I hope that you've looked at the Career Services brochure that admissions provided you. If you have, you will see that our alums go east and west of the Mississippi and north and south of the Mason-Dixon line. We are set in the South, but we have a national reach. And that's important for a variety of reasons. So if you want to go to New York or DC or Miami or Atlanta or New Orleans or Dallas or Houston or San Francisco or LA or Chicago or any point in between, we have alums there, we have contacts there, and we can help you get there. And a broad reach is important because when you come to Vanderbilt, you may have a destination in mind, but it could change along the way. It could change for personal reasons, or it could change because of your desired practice area. And so having the ability to switch gears even midstream is very helpful. Another advantage is that because 100 of our students don't want to go to the same place, there is less competition per each market. So maybe we have 20 students that want to go to Chicago, and there are a lot of firms in Chicago, and they each want a Vandy student because employers like school diversity. So it's an advantage to you that we have a shotgun effect in terms of employment. And we love the fact, we also do it because the Nashville market is fairly small and we have to get some of you out of town. Traditionally, without naming names, Vanderbilt almost always outperforms in employment its US News ranking among its peers. We're very proud of that, and there are a lot of reasons for that. The first is Dean Guthrie, whom you will hear from in this series. He has said to me so many times, a prime concern of mine is that our students are employed at graduation. And he puts his money where his mouth is. He provides with a lot of resources. He allows some travel funds in certain situations for you, which is very helpful. And he's also himself very involved. Right before the pandemic, we had a new hiring attorney at Cleary Gottlieb in New York. And she contacted the school and she said, I'd really like to meet him. So he went and met with her at his next trip to New York. And a result of that was some Vanderbilt hiring. So his involvement is key. He also encourages the faculty to be involved in that. They come from super prestigious firms or public service employers, and they have contacts. And so they are able to help you in areas of your preferred practice areas. And they do it. I remember one young faculty member a couple years ago joined Vanderbilt, and she said to the dean, "I have no idea how to help the students." So the dean convened a meeting where he had senior faculty and me talk to junior faculty about ways that they can help Vanderbilt students find employment. And this is a wonderful outcome of that was that about 6 months later, that same faculty member called a firm up in behalf of a student, and the student got the job. So they are active and aware of how important employment is, in addition to fantastic teaching. Talk to any one of our students about what great teachers they are. They are absolutely dedicated to your learning, whether it's virtual or in person. They are sensational. And one of my first questions when I meet with students is, well, how is the teaching? And they all rave about how wonderful the teaching is. Another reason that Vanderbilt does so well is active participation by our alumni. Our alums come to Vanderbilt and they enjoy a wonderfully collegial atmosphere. Now, every school is going to tell you that they're collegial, but what I'd like you to do is check out the national polls and see how Vanderbilt does in terms of collegiality. We absolutely are set in the South, and we're civil to each other and we're kind to each other. And if you're not nice when you come to Vanderbilt, you get nice. You have a wonderful experience. You make lifelong friends. And then when you graduate, you start comparing experiences with other law school grads, and you find out that your experience was even better than you thought. And so you become actively involved in helping students find jobs. You come to campus to interview students. You promote students at your firm or your employer. And so it's a continuum of help for students. I've also been in this job a very long time. And so my former students are now hiring attorneys and managing partners. And that's an advantage. So recently, one came to me and said, I'd really like students with this GPA. And I said, you are a fantastic attorney. You've been recognized by so many people as doing a wonderful job, and yet you didn't have that GPA when you were here. And so why don't you just kind of broaden your net a little bit? And they listen, and they're happy to do that because, in fact, if you are admitted to Vanderbilt, you are talented and you can do the job. Finally, the reason that we enjoy success is our own office. We are all dedicated to making sure that we stay in touch with you, that we develop strategies with you, that we're aware of your goals, and if they change, how they change. There are 4 counselors. We know you well. We even know the names of some of your dogs. We know you that well, and we love working with you. Right now, we've been working virtually, and I can tell you that a high point of my day is Zooming with 3 or 4 or 5 students to talk about how things are going. It's a pleasure, and we keep up with each other that way, and we keep going until you find the job that you wish. We're very strategic in the way that we run our program. Vanderbilt doesn't rank. Employers don't like that, but we find that it helps you students. So let me tell you a story about a young woman. I'll call her Holly. She went to a holiday reception at a firm, and later on, during on-campus interviews, when the firm received the schedule, the hiring attorney called me up and said, "Holly's not on my schedule." And I said, "Well, you wanted, a certain GPA, which you think is kind of in the top of the class, and she didn't make it." So the hiring attorney said, "I'm going to change that. I want to talk to her." And he eventually hired her. It's an advantage not to be ranked because Vanderbilt students are nice. And when employers get to know them, they want to hire them. Another way in which we help students is through the lottery system of on-campus interviews. Now, that's kind of an oxymoron right now. On-campus interviews used to mean employers come to campus and they interview you, and then they call you back to their firms for further interviews. Right now, everything's virtual, but we still call them on-campus interviews. So right at this moment, we are going through 1L OCI. And that means the students bid for firms, and we send all the resumes that are made to a particular firm to that firm or that employer. Sometimes there are public interest employers. The employers have 19 interviews, and they may choose half of their schedule. So that's 10. So from the resumes they receive, they choose 10 interviews. Then the computer, according to how the students have ranked the firms or employers, fills it in. So if you ranked the employer number 1, chances are that you have a good chance of getting on that schedule and being interviewed. It's a lot more work for us, but you know what? 25% of callbacks and interviews that happen later are from our 4 students that weren't originally selected by the firms. Because again, once employers meet you, they become intrigued by the way that you answer questions, describe your past experiences or your career goals. So those are the things that we put in place to give you every advantage. We have a counselor that specializes in state clerkships, and later you will hear about a dean of public service who is a Skadden Fellow, very prestigious, who helps you find public service jobs after your first year. My office starts you off. We help you with your resume. We call it Resumania. We help you put your spectacular achievements on one page and make it something which intrigues and interests employers. And we also have a professor, Professor Michael Bressman, who is a bulldog when it comes to clerkships. My colleagues, assistant deans at other schools, are jealous that we have him. They ask me how they can get him, and I say, you can't have him. He will help you with clerkships. So we are set up to be able to give you many, many choices upon graduation. Our office has always been responsive to trends. When the recession came in 2008, we started off-site job fairs, New York, DC, Chicago, Houston, and Dallas. These are where a good number of our students go. And so we had students traveling to those cities, interviewing with those firms, because the firms, because there aren't that many students interested in a city, didn't always want to come to us. They became much more judicious of their resources. We have maintained that, and an earmark of our job fairs is that they are Vanderbilt only. Some of the schools that you will look at have consortiums, meaning there are 3 or 4 different schools participating. A great way, it's efficient, but it may cut down on the number of opportunities that that particular school provides. And so we have decided to do the job fairs on our own and give our students every advantage. We also, going forward, will have something called a meet and greet. Before students bid on firms for their 2L year, they will be able to talk to representatives of 30 to 40 to 50 firms to get a feel, even before they bid, of how the firms operate, of what the firms offer them, of the climate and collegiality of each firm. And we find that that assists the students a great deal in making wise bidding choices. In addition to all this, we have hundreds of what we call non-visiting notices. These are employment opportunities that employers send us because they like Vanderbilt and want to receive applications from Vanderbilt students. So they're going to be from some strong markets like New York and DC, but they're also going to be from some of the smaller markets like Cincinnati, Columbus, Denver, Philly. And so we cover many, many more cities than the major markets. And we find that those work extremely well for students who have interest in those cities. We offer a professional development series. This is to acquaint you with the tons of opportunities that your career can take. You might be a tax attorney. I've had students plop down in a chair in my office and say, I can't believe this. I love tax. And I said, I can't believe it either, but good for you. Or environment, or torts, or whatever it is, transactions, large firm litigation, whatever it is, we will have a series to acquaint you with the challenges and benefits of each of those, so that, again, as you're taking more courses and as you're learning about practice area directions, you can make informed choices. We'll give you, as I said, Resumania will help you do your resume. We'll provide mock interviews. We have you have practice interviews with practicing attorneys. And if you need additional help, we will work with you individually to make sure that you are best prepared to interview well. And finally, the good news is we're good at what we do. The bad news is I don't have a job jar. I can't hand you a job. I can put everything in place for you to find that job, but it will be up to you to get the job. There may be disappointments along the way if this is a very tough situation. Some of my students have said, you know, I've gotten a job for every interview I've ever done. That may not be the case here. This is different. I've had students with 4.2 GPAs who are disappointed in some of their interviews. So it's a rough process, but that's why we're here, to help you understand it, to find out for an employer, why didn't that work? Maybe their needs changed. Maybe you did something that can be corrected in the future, but we are going to work with you to make sure that we keep each step as positive as we can. And the good thing about that is that in the end, the elation that comes with landing the job that you wish is yours. Nobody got it for you. You can thank your counselors sometimes, and many students do, but we always remind you, you're the one that got the job. And we're so proud of that. So with that, Courtney, do you have any questions for me?
You covered most of them. So I actually reached out to our admitted students to see if they had any questions. And you did cover most of them in that presentation. So thank you. But I do have just a couple. One came in asking specifically when you start working with career services and how often you meet with career services during law school.
Normally, we encourage you to get used to law school. Law school starts in August. Looks like it's going to be that way again. And so we might have a presentation, an informational presentation in September. We normally really get going in October, but our professional organization, the National Association of Law Placement, has gotten rid of their guidelines. And if you are eager and want to start working with us earlier, we will do that. Normally, we don't hold Resumania until October. That's a time when you're acclimated to law school and you're maybe ready to assume another responsibility. But we're not going to say that you can't talk to us. And as far as how many times, I'll talk to you every day, twice a day, if you want to. We are available all the time. I prefer students to stay very much in touch with me. I encourage that because I want to know, sometimes you make a career change, and if we're not in conversation, I won't be aware of it. So as often as you want. We have 4 counselors for a relatively small student body of 3 classes. And so we have time to talk to you as much as you want.
And then sort of going on along the lines of that, I think some students have confusion about what to do during the summer between 1L and 2L year. How do you help students figure out what to do for that first summer of law school?
That's a great question. And there are a lot of options. Some students will try to work for a private employer. The A prime reason is that the money is very good because it's prorated according to starting salaries. But what I want to warn you about is those opportunities are way, way less after 1 year of law school than 2 years of law school. I've had spectacular students that tried for private employment their first summer and didn't get anything, but had tons of offers their second summer. Actually, it's almost beneficial for you if you don't go to a private employer because there are so many other opportunities that we help you with. We have resources and we will make specific suggestions, but it can be legal aid societies. It can be interning for a judge. It can be working in-house. All of these you can get credit for or a stipend. And there are multiple opportunities of going to court, working in a district attorney's office, working in a public defender's office, working for a United States attorney, working for the federal public defender. There are, again, all of those opportunities are listed in the career services brochure. Mm-hmm. And you will see that there are many, many, many things that students decide to do that give them excellent legal experience. We don't recommend that you backpack in Europe, but we do recommend that you do something legal and that gives you something to talk about when you're interviewing for your second summer. The second summer is key. There, we hope you'll be able to work in a situation which will lead to a full-time employment or give you experience to really help you understand the direction in which you want to go.
And would you say during their summers, do most students stay in Nashville or do most students work in perhaps the legal market they're interested in working in long term?
Some stay in Nashville. It's easier. They have rent here. And so many students stay in Nashville, and there are a lot of opportunities. I recommend if there is no obvious tie to an area that you'd like to go to, that then you work in that area. And let me tell you a story about Jessie. Jessie came in as a 1L and said, I've been to Seattle one time, but I love it. And I said, okay, Jessie, you're from Ohio. So how do you think you're going to get to Seattle? I said, you've got to get a summer job in Seattle to show them that you're really interested. That's unusual because usually it's not that important, but he was determined to get to Seattle and he had no ties and he'd been there one time, like, okay. So God bless him. He got a job in Seattle and he worked there in a public service. I don't know, I think it was a legal aid situation. He came back. 2L, he interviewed. Well, in the meantime, he was married. His wife's family in Ohio needed him to be back home. So he took his second job in Ohio. Had that not happened, he would have set himself up for Seattle. But because of his ties in Ohio, he easily got a job in Ohio. Mm-hmm. It's not always at all necessary to work in your targeted market your first year. But if it's a situation that's far away and you don't know a lot about it, then we would talk about it and we would say whether that's a reasonable thing to pursue or not. Many students stay in Nashville or they go home and they live at home for free. Mm-hmm. And do a job there and get good experience that way. So, and the majority of jobs after 1 year of law school are public service, government, judicial jobs. They are not private employer jobs. And again, I say, sometimes that's good. I once held up 2 resumes to an employer and I say, what do you prefer? This student who worked at a law firm the first summer or the student who worked for the United States Attorney? He said, actually, we're a litigation firm. I prefer the United States Attorney. So this is all individual. We work with you to help you make the best decision. That's a good question, though.
It also seems from everything you've talked about that your office has really good relationships with the employers you work with. And so I'm curious what you say to employers who maybe are upset about our lack of ranking.
We've sort of crossed that hurdle with most of our employers. Okay. We have long-standing relationships. We all four of us have different parts of the country that we maintain very warm relationships with employers. So it really, they're used to it now. And so it doesn't come up as much as you think it might, because they know, no, there are a couple things going on. They do look at grades. They pay attention to grades. They have some designs on grades, although, as you know, we can sometimes change their minds on that. But they also just like Vanderbilt students, again, because of the teaching. I remember one woman who worked for Fresh Fields in London one summer, and she said to me, I was from the lowest rank law school and I knew more than anybody. And that's because of the good teaching at Vanderbilt. So.
Wow, that's good to hear, and definitely something that our admitted students ask about. So I appreciate you touching on that. I have one final question for you, which really isn't necessarily career service focused, but what has been your favorite part about working at Vanderbilt for the last 24 years?
My favorite part, the hook is the students. You know, it's so fun to work with students. Sometimes it's so easy for them, but the really hook for me is to take a student and who really has trouble, and to work with them and to keep at it and to help them be persistent. And then for them to call me up and say, you don't believe it, I have 2 job offers today, which is not uncommon. It's really, that's the hook for me. I'm a former teacher. I'm not an attorney. I'm a teacher. And I love being a mentor and a teacher to students. And so I would say that's the hook.